Our next presenter is George Sundell from Sundance Associates. George?
Thank you very much. I was here, I guess, in the end of August, and here it is the beginning of October already. And we were talking, in fact, at that time, about a redistricting program, and I kind of broke my presentation down into three facets, and they were the enrollment projection itself, community relations, and finally, geographic information systems, which would be the mapping program that would help us find boundaries that would balance out enrollments. However, and I hope that is the purpose of tonight's meeting, we are really kind of trying to advance the effort here. There were questions after the last presentation. I, in fact, found within the body of that about 14 different questions. All of them, with the exception of two, that is about 85% of the questions, had to do with the enrollment projection part of it. And that is something that was already completed by another consultant, done in detail, and in fact is a quite thorough and comprehensive report of your enrollments. Nonetheless, that is wherein all the questions lie. I had said at the last presentation that enrollment projections can be generally quite straightforward. They're based on historical enrollments and births. Those are the two foundational aspects of an enrollment projection. As an overlay, I sometimes do modifications to that. They generally involve housing, new housing coming into a district that is above the average during the historic period of your enrollments. And I'll repeat that again. It's housing that is approved, and it's above the average during the 6 years, during the previous 6 years. And that is pretty much why you adjust an enrollment. Most other things, like seniors selling their houses and moving, and younger families buying them, and ad infinitum, there's many different things, are generally built into the existing cohort survival projection. That, in fact, is the nature of the projection and the reason that you use it. So you make modifications for extraordinary reasons, not just every trend that you can possibly think of. We do use, again, data from Department of Education, which in fact came from the district, but it was certified and approved for the enrollments. Live births come from Pennsylvania Department of Health and that sort of thing. Always a certifiable source for the information that is the backbone of your enrollments. You have, as I said, already done extensive study. It's been public. Everyone has participated. It's been open to anyone who wanted to hear. You've looked at enrollments. You've looked at capacity of school facilities. And to some extent, you've tried to join the two. It's been, as far as I would say, it's been an excellent endeavor. So why this dilemma in Methaxton? At least that's what I sense, that there's a dilemma. There's an uneasiness. There's an uncertainty that you have your finger on the pulse of the situation. And I understand that real easy, and I hope by the end of the presentation that you will too. You kind of feel like you're between a rock and a hard place. Not, I would say, in terms of redistricting. That is a challenge, but it's not a problematic one. It's the closure of the possible closure of a school. That's what has everybody a little bit itchy, I think, if you will. And also a lot of questions on building utilization and capacity, and should you use 25 students or you should use 22 students? And the answer to that is yes. The real important thing is timing. You will find as I do the presentation that it's not if, but it's a matter of when, and we'll look a little bit harder at that. And is there something that we can find in the existing PEL study that would provide more information and a helpfulness in the sense of this timing question? It is a forest and a trees thing. In terms of the community relations, what I always say is that you are taking what is the common sense here of a township and a volunteer committee and a school board and numerous consultants of study, taking that common sense, and you must make common cause out of it. If there are people who are against it, it will be difficult to get done probably what should be done or ought to be done. So we look at that Pell study, and I call it voluminous because they give an awful lot of background information. They go into very much detail, and anything that anyone really wants to pull out of there, it's for your use and it's for your understanding. But I'll go back to, again, my original statement. It's historic enrollment, it's births, and some form of adjustment for housing if necessary. They did everything by the book as far as I'm concerned, except for births. In 5 years, they kind of like used a 2-year average, and the extended 5 to 10-year projection, they used another number also. That was their professional judgment on what would be most accurate for this township. A little bit more about that in a minute. And the other one was capacity. It seems to be there's these questions on should you go with, and I'm not sure if it's a district policy or just a wished for kind of thing, of 22 students per classroom or 25. It is an important decision, and I don't have that answer today. But I wanted to look a little bit at school year births. These are right out of your Pell study. I've just duplicated them on a graphic here. But what I want to point out is that if I were to do your study for you over again, I would use a 5-year average, which is the red line on the top. That is the standard methodology. That number is up here, the 309 number, okay? They did do a high possibility and use 308. I'm not quite sure if they're doing the same thing I was doing, but the numbers differ. What they really suggested is the recommended was this around a 2-year average number, and that's displayed here by the green. And then they did a low-end number if there was a decrease, and that shows really by the blue there. So you can see in terms of overall capacity, those bars, when it comes to enrollments, are a few students apart. Again, 25 students, it could be a classroom every year, winds up to 2 classrooms in 2 years, 3 classrooms in 3 years. We really need to get a better handle on it than what's shown here. And then to boot, there are those among you, I can just tell by the nature of the questions, that think live births are going to go back up. And guess what? It's a possibility. If you were looking back here at this trend, you would have said, oh, we're going to go down here. But you didn't. We popped back up well, and then we declined again. But you don't know. These births very well could start up tomorrow because the economy changes. People's attitudes are different. They feel better about having families again. Any number of things could, in fact, change those birth data. But that's why you use the 5-year average. That, again, is the standard methodology, and I would use that top flat red bar if I were to do your projection. So what else was different about it? Well, this capacity thing that we keep talking about. I've said they use 25 students in their analyses. Somewhere I keep reading maybe there's a possibility of 22. And I would ask you another question. What is the efficiency of an elementary school? Do you always have 25 students in every classroom? Obviously not. So is there an efficiency factor that needs to be accounted for also? Somewhere maybe between 90 and 100%. Well, if we redistrict with 5 schools, there's no problem, okay? But that's just rebalancing and bringing them into a better arrangement in regard to what the boundaries are. But clearly you have capacity for the number of students. However, we consolidate to 4, big question. Then the capacity changes overall to 1725, and we only have 69 classrooms in the now remaining 4 elementary schools. What does that do for us? Well, before I tell you, let me just say that I know there's a lot of people that are very cynical, Mark Twain also, about the use of statistics. But generally, statistical analysis will get us to where we want to go, and so we're going to look at some more. So I have 2 analyses here, and I have 2 sections to each one, 1A and 1B, and then there'll be a 2A and a 2B. Here I am using the higher projection that would have been based on an average of 5 years. So we're using that 308 birth analysis that gave us the higher number. And I have taken the capacity of each school, again by the report, and proportioned them across the district. What percentage of the overall capacity is each one of these elementary schools? Now we are looking at an individual elementary school basis here, not is there a capacity for 1725 district-wide, but is there capacity at each of the elementary schools for their right proportion of students? When I redistrict, I'm not saying that just because we have 400 here, though it would be an objective, I would bring in it as close as I can to say 23.75, because that's how you balance them off based on their existing room use and size and that sort of thing. So that adds up to 100% of the capacity of the school, if I add those 4 elementary schools, and what proportion they have, okay? And let me just say again that we would do individual elementary school projections also. You did not do that in your current study. I do them because this is what we want to know. Is one section of town growing faster than another section for some reason? Or is there a development plan in one area, not in another, that's going to change those enrollments? So we will do individual elementary school projections. Again, if we keep 5, and we'll do them if we keep 4. We'll do it both ways. On that top line where it says PEC, that is the enrollment projection per grade level that PEL did in their study. What I've taken is the 269 students that are going to show up in kindergarten at the end of the 5-year projection, by the way. Top chart is the 5th year out in the standard projection. Bottom chart is the 10th year out in the extended projection. So if I take the 269 students that were going to show up in kindergarten and divide, and take 23% of it, I would have 62 students at Arrowhead. I would have 70 students at Eagleville in kindergarten. And I've done that for each of the grade levels. You can read it across and say then that under this scenario of 308 births, the higher end projection that Pell did, you would have a total of 381 students at Arrowhead. Guess what? They can take 400. 19 seats open at Arrowhead. 21 seats open. 21, 19, 22. So in the end, we can see that if we look at this, we have 10 to 20 extra seats at each one of these schools. So the question is, should we move forward then with closing a school? Let's dig a little bit deeper. In fact, I'm being a little bit of a teacher today. Emily Dickinson, she kind of said that if you really want to look at something and get at the truth, you need to have to take a different slant on things. A different perspective, that means, or go deeper into the detail. And the truth will dazzle you gradually. Well, I'm going to hit you over the head with it a little bit in the next slide. Analysis 1B, same scenario, the 308 student higher end projection. If I divide the number that was originally in the last chart, in other words, the 62 students that were in kindergarten in Arrowhead by 25 students per classroom, I come up with 2.48 classrooms. Well, there's no such thing as 0.48. I need to go to 3. Okay? I do it with the next number, and all the way along that chart, I divide each one of those prior enrollments for the school by 25. And I find out the number of classrooms that were needed by grade level. And now I need 18 classrooms at Arrowhead to accommodate this scenario. And guess what? I only have 16 that are used as regular classrooms. I am deficient 2 classrooms. In fact, at all the schools doing this kind of an area, at the end of 5 years, I am deficient classrooms in every one of the buildings, a total of 6. At the end of 10 years, because again, under the PEL scenario, the enrollments were increasing from 1644 to 1681. I now find myself 8 classrooms deficient. Whether someone had done this arithmetic or not, you were feeling it in your bones, okay, and you were really wondering. Again, this is the high-end projection, the average. I'm not trying to force an issue here. So as I said, 6 deficient and then 8 later. Insufficient classrooms, obviously, in both 5 and 10 years. So what causes this uncertainty? Let's just talk about it for a minute. Maybe when I redistrict, the alignment could be a little bit off. We do our best, but that might cause a problem in the future. One school area grows and another one doesn't. Nothing that we could handicap now, but it does happen. Or there is more housing. I don't think there will ever be a housing boom, but might you get some point where there's housing above the average? Multifamily housing is very big right now different than single family. I don't know if you're zoned for it yet. I haven't really looked into that much of background. But if you did have that housing boom or senior exodus, of course, it could cause one of these, an enrollment increase. Or what if there's new curriculum mandates from the state, and so you have to take one of those classrooms and put it into use as some special function? Again, these are all what ifs. I'm not saying it's going to happen. We talked about the economy improving. People feel better. They have more children when they feel more secure. And I'm going to say anyway, does everyone understand that the accuracy of an enrollment projection using the cohort survival method, which is our best method, using that method, it's plus or minus 1% accuracy per year as you move out. By the end of a 5-year projection, you're plus or minus. You could be 5% high or you could be 5% low. At the end of 10 years, you could be 10% high, 10% low. It's one of the reasons that I encourage, obviously it's good for business, the school districts to do these frequently. Do them more often, not less often. What if, in fact, how dire would it get if we did a 10% increase in student enrollment? And let's just take a look at it. This is an exercise. It's not a forecast. So we do the same thing, but instead of there being instead of there being 400 or 1750, whatever the capacity was over there, I now have 110% of capacity. And that's the manner in which I distributed what used to be 269 students in the Pell study, now becomes 296, okay? An increase in kindergarten of 10%. So I just wanted to look at it to give people a sense of what's the order of magnitude here. And we do the same kind of analysis. We now have a deficit of students in every single school of between 20 and 35 students. Okay, so the problem becomes an order of magnitude, 3 or 4 times larger than where it was. The worst scenario here now is looking at classrooms. If there was a 10% increase in the projected enrollment, we do the same thing as we did before, but now there's a deficit of 14 classrooms 5 years out, 16 classrooms 10 years out. And guess what? That's the same as one school. Okay. Now again, this is not a forecast, but it's where all your fear and anxiety comes from if something like this is going to happen. I will do the projections over. I'll do my own methodology if you have me. I will listen to people who tell me, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. When I do approved housing, and do you hear me? It's approved housing. It's been through planning. It's been through zoning. It's ready to go, and the developer with whom I have a conversation tells me the market is such that I'm in the ground come March, or some such nonsense. They tell me it goes ahead. That's what I call approved housing, and that would make an adjustment to that 308 study. Now, also, just today, the district submitted their October 1 reports on enrollment, and so we can move it 1 year forward. We have 1 more year. So there's reasons to do this over. But this kind of fear needs to be a lie. But let me talk a little bit about community relations. Okay, this article just appeared in the paper last week, and it's another school district going through the same thing. But I just excerpted from that news article, most of this from the superintendent. We're going to thoughtfully do this. We're not padlocking the doors tomorrow. Okay, this is just being sensitive to the parents and the population. On the other hand, he mentioned the other schools are a little bit old, and now we can concentrate on the other ones and bringing them up to speed for new technologies and that sort of thing. Just being real. We want the best for our kids. It is easier to give them 4 really great schools than it is to give them 5. And it's more cost effective. All the reasons in the world why we might want to close a school. The school board has, for years, studied this issue. Probably more years than the people who wanted to close the school thought was good, and probably too few years for what the people who said, no, let's keep all 5 neighborhood schools wanted, okay? There's always a happy medium. We've had 2 long-range planning committees, and honestly, I'm not sure how often or how long this committee has been meeting and whether this is the first or second time. But this district had 2 different committees that had to go through before they finally could arrive at a consensus. And then they acknowledged that this is a very emotional issue. It's community-based, and everybody comes out and they wants to hear it. Doing your PR and your community relations is very important. Getting volunteers out from the community and hearing this sort of thing is very important. There's a lot of history in every building. There's histories in how the neighborhoods were grouped and how they were districted and these sort of things. Very sensitive. I run another company that's a bit of a PR company. It helps school district pass referendums. I am from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and over there we have to pass a referendum in order for there to be any capital improvements to the school that don't come out of our operating budget. So I work with school districts all the time doing public and community relations also. So I just want to kind of like end on that. I've shown you a little bit, and what I'm trying to say is timing is everything. I think I have no doubt, looking at your numbers, that there is a school closure that would be appropriate in the future. The question really has to do with when might that occur, that everyone is happy that what we're looking at is the right solution. So as I mentioned, I'm right across the river. I work in the Delaware Valley all the time. It is where I live, it is where I work, and I promise that I will give you what I consider to be the best, both in the geographic analysis of redistricting, if we get that far, and in enrollment projections and community relations. My name will be on your report, and I will promise you that best. Thank you. Are we doing questions or no questions?
Well, we're not taking questions, but I just didn't know if you wanted to, you spoke primarily about enrollment projections, which is phase 1 of the process.
Yeah.
I didn't know if your other partner about the regional timeline
okay.
want to mention anything about
Yeah.
that.
So let me speak to it, because I was really speaking to what I think is the, shall I call it the hang-up issue? I do provide full mapping services for geographic information systems. I've done redistricting, if you followed it, down in the Westchester area. That one was just complete about a year ago. I've done it in Cherry Hill, Edison, a long list, those are New Jersey, a long list of school districts where I do take your current enrollment, the most recent year, and the addresses of those students, no names. I take addresses and other attributes, like maybe they're in special ed, or maybe they have English as a second language, whatever it is you might want to have me analyze. In Westchester, we also looked at, and it gets to be difficult, the free lunch program. And we were trying to balance in each of our districts the same percentage of students that were in the free lunch program. As a way of getting around, you cannot use ethnicity. So I can do all that kind of analysis. I give you reports that show year by year, grade level by grade level at each and every school, okay? Just as I gave you those charts showing you classroom levels at each school. That was just for 2 years, 5 years out and 10 years out. I will give them to you for every year. It is on our part a program that we manipulate. We look at the analysis and we give you the reports, okay? It's not the kind that some of you were asking for, which you can fiddle with. I can't for the life of me see why you would want to fiddle with it. And it would cause nothing but confusion. And then your opinion and your thoughts, oh, I looked at the program and we did this with it, and guess what I find out? Wrong, 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 wrong. That's all I can tell you. So yes, it's a program that we manipulate. It is an ESRI mapping program. It's the biggest on the planet that we use. It is common and that sort of thing. So I've done, I guess, 7 or 8 redistricting programs, just like in the last 2 or 3 years, that use this ESRI program to give you all the information that you do need, including where the boundaries changed, plus or minuses. Everything that you need is there, believe me. It's an extremely powerful program. And I did mention the third aspect, community relations. I think is very, very important. Can't, in fact, impress upon you enough how important that is. So thank you for that opportunity.